It genuinely boggles the mind that it's taken 11 years for some developer out there to go, you know that Iron Man fella? That'd be a really good game mechanic if we could nail it, right? Okay, we know that Airtight Games and Capcom tried to tackle it with Dark Void back in 2010, but we all know that was a huge pile of steaming feces. However, Anthem and the devs over at BioWare have achieved just that, the whole Iron Man fantasy. Ironically, in a year where he could potentially meet his maker. Spoilers there? Well, maybe not, we don't know. Unfortunately, BioWare's expedition into the looter-shooter genre is not much of a fantasy in other areas. Unless you find staring at a loading screen your ultimate fantasy. If it is, ready the tissues. BioWare's take on the looter-shooter genre is an interesting one. One that truly excels in some areas, but is a bizarre misstep in others. Many other areas. Anthem takes place on a mysterious planet, one at the behest of an omniscient energy source known as the Anthem of Creation. You play as one of the world's freelancers, an exo-suited-up crew of Guardians of the Realm, tasked with keeping the peace and, in this particular instance, tackling the Heart of Rage, a cataclysmic event that has plagued the nation of Bastion. Anthem boasts a cast of really likeable characters and an intriguing story from beginning to end, and it really feels like a BioWare creation at heart, which is a definite pro for games of this ilk. While BioWare has seemingly delivered a nice step up for the events to come, it's a true shame that a lot of the game's coolest lore, though, lies in its library. It's basically Destiny's Grimoire issue all over again. From a gameplay standpoint, Anthem is a truly enjoyable romp that excels from a combat perspective, with multiple javelins to try your hand at, which each represent different playstyles, and one you can switch between on the fly without having to start a new character like Destiny. You'll be flying through the air and dropping onto foes from 100 feet in a matter of minutes. The fact that each suit has 12 separate abilities and powers to choose from as well means that you can truly create a javelin that will suit your playstyle. Sure, the Ranger may be a little vanilla, but the Interceptor and the Storm javelins are truly a sight to behold, and you'll be chaining combos, dashes, and utilising the brilliant fly mechanics in no time whatsoever. Genuinely, we absolutely adored the minute-to-minute gameplay while in the open world, and it's everything we wanted from Anthem. It truly is. That, unfortunately, is where the praise ends. Anthem is a game chock full of baffling design decisions that range from the ridiculous, like not being able to switch weapons and abilities on the fly, and only being able to do so at Fort Tarsis' Forge. Heck, you can't even check your loadout when anywhere in the world but in the Forge. To the more basic, like not being able to add custom waypoints in the open world on the map. Unfortunately, the mission design structure, for the most part, is devoid of creativity and completely soulless as well, meaning you'll largely be doing the same thing over and over again throughout the entire game. Thankfully, the game's combat saves it here somewhat. Oh, and don't get started on that mission early on that basically says, here's a list of open world activities to grind. Go away and do that and then come back. Honestly, I could sit here for hours and just reel off the game's weird design decisions, but we won't do that as we value your time as much as we value ours. Where Anthem is a complete letdown though, especially from a looter-shooter perspective, is with its loot. In my 30-odd hours of playtime, I got 1 masterwork drop and 0 legendaries, which for a looter meant to entice with its loot is frankly preposterous. In fact, the whole lack of meaningful loot in general is an oversight and shows BioWare's lack of understanding for the genre. For instance, all the guns of a specific type look pretty much exactly the same. The only difference between a common and a masterwork is the skin. Compare that to Destiny and you'll see why Anthem is a mile behind its sci-fi competitor. The same goes with your armor for the javelin as well, which considering Anthem is a third-person shooter is unfathomable. Anthem's visual customization might as well not exist. We absolutely applaud the decision to allow players to customize the color and vinyls on their armor. That bit is great. But only having a few options at launch to differentiate the actual visual aesthetics of your javelin is absolutely bonkers. BioWare has even cocked up the store as well, which at any one time in its current state has only a handful of items, some of which only apply to certain javelins. Anthem is a looter-shooter, essentially without the loot bit. If BioWare doesn't act fast to rectify this, this will be the death of the game. Technically, Anthem is a bit of a mess as well. When things kick off, which they frequently do, on the One, the 1S and the PS4, the frame rate is all over the place. It's not even completely stable on the 1X or the Pro either. And it doesn't matter which console you're on, the frame rate in the in-game cutscenes is bloody awful. Visually though, it's stunning on the Pro and the 1X, while disappointing on the budget end consoles. Again, it doesn't matter what console you're playing it on for the pre-render cutscenes though, they're just about plain awful compared to the in-engine stuff. And this is before we've even started talking about the bugs, which are numerous. But he's talking about the missions that make you reload because the next objective doesn't pop, or enemies that just straight up disappear in front of your eyes. It's a bit all over the place. That's not even taking into account the one time it stopped counting my alliance progress for a fair few hours, or the time I leveled up to 28 3 times because it wasn't tracking my stronghold progress. Perhaps the biggest disappointment of all, though, are Anthem's insanely long load screens, and the frequency of them. This is no exaggeration, but in the few tests we did perform, we generally found that from an hour's gameplay, we were looking at load screens for a good 10-12 minutes of said hour. That's between 15 to 20% of your time sat staring at a static screen. And you know the worst part of it all is, there is literally nothing to do in them. Nothing. They wouldn't be so bad if you could fiddle with your character or something, but you can't. Nothing. Nada. And we're not overplaying their frequency either. For example, this is a traditional run of what can happen. Playing a mission, you die, load screen. You move from the open world to a dungeon, load screen. Fall behind your party in a mission, load screen. Finish a mission, load screen. Go to the forge, load screen. Leave the forge, load screen. Seriously, without being able to switch your weapons on the fly as well, many a scenario can play out like this. Finish mission, get new weapon, load screen to get into the forge, load screen to get back into Fort Tarsis, and then a load screen to get back out into free play. But wait, you actually don't like this weapon, so then you leave the expedition, load screen, go to the forge, load screen, leave the forge, load screen, go back into free play, load screen. It is utterly ridiculous, and I've never known a game like it. From a post-game perspective as well, you could argue that Anthem is lacking here too. The end game in Anthem is basically this: grind. That's it. And I know what you're thinking. Dan, that's basically what Destiny, Diablo, Path of Exile, The Division, etc. do. Yes, you are right, but without the lure of the loot, the whole process of the grind itself is not nearly as alluring. The endgame does open up more strongholds, a la Destiny's Strikes, so that's cool, but honestly, what's the point in grinding when all you can lock is a gun that kind of looks like the one you already have now? Ugh. The truth of the matter is that buried somewhere beneath the poor optimization, the endless load screens, and some downright ridiculous design decisions, there exists a good game. The game looks fantastic on the high-end consoles, the score and the world building are classic BioWare, as are the characters, and the combat is top-notch. It's just a shame how much shit you have to wade through to experience all that. Does the game feel rushed? Absolutely. Can Anthem eventually be a great game? Damn straight. With some tweaks and some major work done on the load times, it totally can. It just isn't that right now, which is a real shame.